Welcome to the deep dive. We're really thrilled to have you joining us today.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
If you have been doing everything right, optimizing your routine, hitting your milestones, checking all the boxes, but you still wake up feeling fundamentally stuck or overwhelmed, well, you are exactly who we built this discussion for.
Absolutely.
Because today, we are wading through a massive stack of philosophical essays, historical analyses, and contemporary psychological papers that all converge on two ancient frameworks, Stoicism and Epicureanism.
But our mission today isn't to just rehash Antiquity 101.
No, not at all. The goal of this deep dive is to synthesize these readings and extract a highly practical architectural blueprint for your own personal freedom in the modern world. Okay, let's unpack this, because to figure out how to actually be free, we first have to honestly diagnose why we feel so trapped.
It really is the defining paradox of our era. And the essays we're looking at today, they diagnose it with brutal clarity. Think about the architecture of your life right now. You possess an unprecedented volume of choices.
Right, I mean, you have infinite access to digital tools.
You can pivot between a dozen different career trajectories. You can curate your lifestyle aesthetics right down to the specific algorithmic feed you consume with your morning coffee.
Yeah.
We have maximized our optionality.
And yet the data shows that despite having all these choices, we feel increasingly paralyzed and enslaved, honestly.
Enslaved is a perfect word for it. You are tethered to notification pings, exhausted by a hyper-competitive attention economy, and navigating this pervasive low-level anxiety about a future you can't control.
We've gained endless options, but we've somehow minimized our actual agency. That distinction between having options and having agency is huge.
It's massive.
We look at our calendars and feel like we're just managing the overwhelming administrative burden of our own lives. And I think what the literature makes clear is that downloading another productivity app or trying a new time-blocking system
isn't going to fix a structural lack of freedom.
Yeah.
God. To reclaim your autonomy, you really have to look beyond behavioral life hacks and adopt what are essentially survival strategies for the soul. The texts present two competing blueprints for freedom that emerged during the Hellenistic period.
Let's lay those out.
In very broad strokes, you can either build an unshakable fortress, which is the Stoic approach, or you can plant a hidden garden, which is the Epicurean approach.
Going through the reading on the Stoic approach, founded by Zeno of Citium, the concept of internal sovereignty really stood out.
Yeah, it's a powerful idea.
The core argument here is that you are only truly free when absolutely nothing external dictates your psychological state, which sounds incredible in theory, but the mechanism they use to get there, the dichotomy of control, feels incredibly difficult to apply.
Oh, it is. Because you have to draw a hard line down the center of reality. On one side, things that are up to us, like our judgments, intentions, and desires.
And on the other side,
things that are not up to us, which is basically everything else. Health, wealth, the economy, other people's opinions, your boss's mood.
right, and anything on that not up to us list is categorized as an indifferent.
Exactly. They might be preferred indifference, like having a healthy body or a stable income, but they cannot be the foundation of your inner peace. If your emotional equilibrium depends entirely on your company's stock price or the validation of your peers, you have fundamentally handed over your sovereignty. You're a slave to circumstance.
But I want to push back on that a little, because framing it that way can almost feel like gaslighting in a modern context.
How so?
Well, it's easy to read a philosophical treatise and say, don't let your boss's mood affect you. But if your boss's mood dictates your paycheck, and your paycheck dictates your ability to keep a roof over your family's head, how is it practically possible to genuinely treat that as an indifferent? Doesn't that just breed apathy?
That is the exact friction point a lot of modern critics highlight. But the texts clarify that treating something as an indifferent doesn't mean you don't care about the outcome.
Yeah.
It means you decouple your self-worth and your fundamental psychological stability from that outcome. You still show up, you still do excellent work, you negotiate for that paycheck, but you accept that the final decision rests in someone else's hands.
So if the promotion falls through because of a subjective whim, you don't shatter.
Right. Your intention and your virtue, which are the only things you actually control, remain completely intact.
That makes a lot of sense. You are insulating the core of who you are. And the journals of Epictetus provide such a staggering historical proof of concept for this.
They really do.
Here is a man who was born into literal slavery. His physical body was owned and governed by another human being. But his writings reveal this chilling irony. He realized that a person can be physically restricted, completely bound by systemic chains, and yet remain infinitely freer than their master.
Because his master was a slave to anger, a slave to status anxiety, wealth preservation.
Exactly. Epicurus was a slave to no one, because his mind was sovereign.
It completely inverts our standard definition of liberty.
There's a specific line from Epictetus in the research that captures the entire ethos. He writes, "It is not events that disturb people, but their judgments concerning them."
Yes, the event itself is neutral. Your story about the event is what traps you.
Right.
What's fascinating here is how beautifully this specific brand of psychological resilience scales to power. You just detailed the mindset of a man who was enslaved, but we see this exact same internal architecture applied at the absolute peak of global power. Look at Marcus Aurelius.
Oh, managing the Roman Empire.
Exactly. He is managing the geopolitical weight of an empire, dealing with the Antonine Plague, facing down betrayal from his own generals, fighting brutal border wars. Yet his private journals reflect this profound inner detachment.
He is operating at the center of absolute chaos, wielding immense power, but refusing to be psychologically owned by that chaos.
And the analysis in the text uses a brilliant metaphor for this. Stoicism is a diamond. It represents positive freedom.
Meaning the power to act with agency and remain structurally intact no matter how much external pressure is applied.
Right. You aren't avoiding the heavy demands of life. You aren't running away from the storm. You are just making your internal structure so incredibly dense and durable that the storm cannot crush you.
That is the fortress. You build walls thick enough to withstand any siege.
But let's be honest, living under constant siege is exhausting.
It really is. Having to constantly flex that emotional discipline takes a massive toll, which is why the alternative blueprint we reviewed is so compelling.
Yeah, if the Stoic method is just bracing for impact forever, I can see how people burn out on that.
So let's look at the Epicurean texts founded by Epicurus. If Stoicism is the fortress, Epicureanism is the garden. And they define freedom not as enduring pressure, but as strategic withdrawal.
It's a defensive strategy to completely remove the obstacles that prevent a peaceful life.
We really have to dismantle a pervasive modern myth before we go further, though.
Oh, definitely. When we use the word Epicurean today, we think of a 5-star tasting menu, luxury, and hedonistic excess.
Right, the whole foodie culture thing.
Yeah, but the historical reality of Epicurus' philosophy couldn't be further from that. The guy lived on bread, water, and occasional cheese.
The actual goal of Epicureanism is the pursuit of two states. Ataraxia, which is profound tranquility and the complete absence of mental anxiety, and hypoponia, the absence of physical pain.
Exactly.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the way they achieve that profound tranquility is through a ruthless auditing of human desire. It's essentially an ancient framework for minimalism.
They break our desires down into a 3-tiered hierarchy to figure out what is actually serving us and what is secretly enslaving us.
Let's break down that hierarchy.
The first tier is natural and necessary desires. These are your baseline needs. Basic nourishment, simple shelter, and deep, meaningful friendships.
And the texts emphasize that you should pursue these freely, right?
Yes, because they are incredibly easy to satisfy and they yield genuine, lasting peace.
Okay, what's the second tier?
Natural but unnecessary. This is the luxury food, expensive wine, physical indulgence like sex. The guidance here is to treat these with extreme caution.
Meaning you can enjoy them if they cross your path, but you must never let them become a habit or an expectation.
Exactly. Because dependency is the enemy of freedom.
And then there's the third tier, which the texts frame as the ultimate trap, the vain and empty desires.
Vain and empty desires include the pursuit of fame, political power, immense wealth, social prestige. The Epicurean mandate is to avoid these entirely.
They are just a mirage.
Totally. You think that chasing the corner office or obsessing over your social media metrics or trying to go viral will eventually grant you the resources to be free, but the reality is that the goalpost always moves.
By chasing vain desires, you're simply volunteering to put on a heavier, shinier set of shackles.
To avoid those shackles, their tactical advice is summed up in the phrase "lave bises,"
which means live hidden.
Right. To be truly free, you have to consciously step off the battlefield. You withdraw from the public arena, you opt out of the corporate rat race, and you retreat to a secluded garden with a tight-knit circle of trusted friends.
You keep your needs incredibly small, your footprint light, so that fortune literally has nothing left to take away from you. You've removed the targets from your back.
And it wasn't just physical withdrawal, it was a profound cognitive withdrawal from the anxieties of their era. Epicureanism leaned heavily on rational materialism.
The idea that the entire universe is composed solely of atoms and void.
Yes. While that sounds like standard modern science to us, its historical purpose was purely therapeutic. Epicurus wanted to liberate people from the crushing existential dread of angry gods and the fear of the afterlife.
Because if death is simply the dissolution of atoms and you cease to exist, there is nothing to fear. It was the ultimate technique for anxiety reduction. Taking that metaphysical weight off your shoulders makes the present moment infinitely lighter.
The metaphor for this is so evocative. If the Stoic is the diamond, the Epicurean is the bird.
It perfectly illustrates negative freedom, liberation from interference.
Rather than developing the incredible density required to endure the bars of the cage, the bird uses its lightness and agility to avoid the cage entirely.
You don't fight the Krupp system, you just fly away to the woods.
This raises an important question. Looking at the diamond and the bird, which of these philosophies actually serves you, the listener, better in your current reality?
Because, as the deep dive materials point out, they have vastly different practical applications. It's time for a bit of a candor check regarding your own life.
Let's examine the use cases.
Choose Stoicism if you are someone who is deeply embedded in the friction of the world. If you are a leader, an activist fighting for systemic change, a parent raising kids in a chaotic environment, or someone navigating a high-stakes, high-stress career.
You cannot simply fly away to a secluded garden in those situations. People depend on you holding the line. That is where Stoicism is non-negotiable.
It gives you the emotional steel to walk through the fire without burning up.
It does, but we have to be honest about the limitations of the fortress. Stoicism can be incredibly austere. It requires constant, unrelenting cognitive vigilance.
Yeah, as several of the psychological critiques in our reading pointed out, the Stoic is someone who deeply feels the weight of their troubles, but forces themselves to overcome them through sheer force of will.
Living in a state of perpetual endurance can become a very heavy, rigid way to exist.
Which is exactly why the Epicurean garden is so alluring. If you are burned out, if you are deeply disillusioned with the status games of modern society, and you value peace above all else, opting out is a valid strategy.
The garden provides immediate, tangible joy. It strips away the ambient anxiety of the attention economy because you simply stop playing the game.
But the texts are also quick to point out the fatal flaw of the garden: fragility.
Utter fragility. Your life in the garden is tranquil, beautiful, and deeply fulfilling, right up until the exact moment an unavoidable crisis kicks the door down.
A sudden medical diagnosis, an economic collapse, a literal war breaking out.
If your entire philosophy is built on avoidance and strategic withdrawal, you haven't developed the armor required to deal with tragedy when it inevitably finds you.
So I want to pose this directly to you listening right now. Take an honest inventory of your current season of life. What do you actually need?
Are you in a season of intense pressure where you need to fortify your walls and build a stronger diamond to withstand the storm?
Or have you been fighting an exhausting, unwinnable battle for so long that you need to give yourself permission to step off the battlefield, plant a quiet garden, and remember what it feels like to just live?
It is the ultimate tension. But the real breakthrough in the essays we've analyzed is that you don't actually have to choose a side.
I love the intellectual pragmatism of the hybrid approach. There is an advanced, synthesized view that prevents you from becoming locked into a rigid dogma. You don't have to be just the diamond or just the bird. You can borrow the best architecture from both.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at the letters of Seneca. Seneca was a prominent Roman statesman and one of history's most influential Stoics.
Yet, if you read his correspondence, he is constantly quoting Epicurus.
He is seamlessly blending the insights of these rival schools. When challenged on it, he essentially shrugs it off, writing, "I'll never be ashamed to quote a bad writer with a good saying." He recognized that rigid tribalism is the enemy of wisdom.
That flexibility is brilliant. He's saying, look, my foundational operating system is Stoic, but the guy sitting in the garden has figured out a few things about human happiness that I'd be a fool to ignore.
Exactly. And from that synthesis, the deep dive materials offer a highly actionable, modern blueprint for daily life. Be Epicurean in your lifestyle design, but be Stoic in your mental response to adversity.
Let's map that out. Being Epicurean in your lifestyle design means you actively, intentionally simplify your desires. You ruthlessly audit the vain and empty pursuits.
You stop chasing clout. You cultivate your own garden at home, whether that's a literal garden, a dedicated hobby, or just a fiercely protected boundary around your personal time.
You prioritize deep, offline friendships. You savor a simple meal, and when you log off from work, you fully disconnect from the noise of the rat race. You proactively engineer an environment of peace.
But, and this is the critical failsafe, because you recognize that the universe is chaotic and outside of your control, you know that the peace of the garden will occasionally be shattered.
And the moment that crisis breaches the garden gate, you seamlessly shift into your Stoic mental response.
When the layoff happens and the health scare arrives, you don't panic or collapse because you've been doing the internal work. You practice the dichotomy of control.
You accept what you cannot change, and you maintain your virtue. You handle the external chaos with the unbreakable density of the diamond, precisely so you can eventually return to the peace of the bird.
It really is the ultimate architectural design for a resilient human life. Out of all the dense philosophical debate we've combed through, the research distills this entire operating system down into a single, profound formula for the listener.
It's 3 steps. Want little, endure much, and depend on nothing external.
Want little represents your Epicurean simplicity and your rejection of empty desires. Endure much is your Stoic resilience and emotional steel.
And depend on nothing external is the ultimate unifying definition of true personal freedom, transcending both ancient schools.
We have covered some massive conceptual ground today.
We really have. We've examined the intense, unbreakable diamond of the Stoic fortress, learning how practicing internal sovereignty can make you completely invincible against the unpredictable chaos of the world.
And we've contrasted that with the agile bird of the Epicurean garden, exploring how strategic withdrawal and a ruthless simplification of our desires can liberate us from the exhausting manufactured anxieties of modern life.
All of this material was gathered to help you construct your own customized, deeply personal architecture for freedom. So what does this all mean?
I think it leaves us at a deeply provocative intersection, one that isn't entirely resolved by the texts. Well, both of these ancient paths, whether you are fortifying the ultimate internal stronghold or retreating to the perfectly hidden grove, demand that true freedom requires radically reducing our attachments and our expectations of the outside world.
Right.
But if you take that to its logical extreme, it begs a haunting question. If you successfully strip away all of your external desires, if you completely abandon all societal ambitions, and you entirely eliminate your reliance on outside validation, connection, or circumstance,
Does the ultimate state of personal freedom actually look indistinguishable from having absolutely nothing at all?
exactly. At what point does the Epicurean's quiet, secluded garden or the Stoic's heavily armored, detached fortress stop being a sanctuary and start becoming a beautifully decorated form of total isolation?
That is a fascinating, heavy paradox to carry with you this week. We hope this deep dive has armed you with some powerful new tools to examine the integrity of your own walls and the soil of your own garden. Thank you so much for exploring these incredible texts with us, and we encourage you to keep questioning, keep refining, and keep building your own path to freedom. Until next time.